Welcome to the presentation entitled Closing the Achievement Gap by Activating Gardner's Multiple Intelligences at Various Levels of Education in the Carpathian Basin. My name is Dr. Renáta Dezső, and I'm from the Institute of Education Sciences at the University of Pécs, Hungary. Amongst contemporary theories of learning, a well-known concept is that of Howard Gardner's theory of multiple intelligences, a concept that may add indeed to closing the gap from several approaches bioeducation. During the process of pre-service and in-service teacher education at the University of Pécs, Hungary, a community of enthusiastic educators has been formed working on the various possible pedagogical applications of the Gardnerian theory within the last decade. This continuously changing professional team, led by myself, has involved colleagues representing different levels of the education system throughout the years. In the forthcoming presentation, which is co-given by myself and a PhD candidate with Barbara Sándor-Schmidt, supervised by me, you will be introduced to these achievements in a nutshell. Although Professor Gardner published his theory almost 4 decades ago, it is definitely timely to talk about. Last year, the American Educational Research Association announced that Howard Gardner won the 2020 Distinguished Contributions to Research in Education Award for his outstanding achievement and success in education research. Gardner is best known for his theory of multiple intelligences, which suggests that human intelligence should be differentiated into modalities rather than be accepted as a general ability. The 8 modalities, linguistic, logical mathematical, naturalist, spatial, bodily kinesthetic, musical, interpersonal, and intrapersonal, is illustrated by a pie model in this slide. Timeliness of our talk is also symbolic. For the Harvard Graduate School of Education, the home to Gardner's professional activities, celebrated its centennial last year. Additionally, Gardner himself published his memoir in 2022. The University of Pécs Diversity Community of Educators interprets the original Gardnerian idea as a possible concept for widening the framework of giftedness. Contrary to Kinchelow's and colleagues' progressive critics, which claim that Gardner's theory has been typically adapted amongst middle-class and upper-middle-class pupils and students worldwide, our adequate professional practice, research, development, and training, in our case, several forms of teacher education, show the opposite. During the years we spent on the field, we learned that the theory of multiple intelligences may add to the notion of closing the achievement gaps of socially disadvantaged and/or ethnic minorities within and outside Hungary as well in our region in Europe in the Carpathian Basin. Continuing the first part of our presentation and outlining the development of our diversity research group, and in the closing phase of this talk, Ms. Sándor-Schmidt is presenting the main findings of her own doctoral research in progress. Different forms of teacher education are significant when we talk about closing the gaps in our society. Educators at all levels may add to social justice and equity by their shared democratic values, attitudes, knowledge, critical thinking, and understanding and skills. The main training profile of the Institute of Education Sciences at the University of Pécs is providing the pedagogical psychological model of pre-service teacher education for middle and high school, but we have disciplinary programs of education sciences at bachelor, master's, and PhD levels as well. This way, and by providing diverse forms of in-service teacher education, we may reach out to every single level of the education system when learning, teaching, and researching on with the Gardnerian approach of learners. Probably due to his family history, Professor Gardner suggests to use his MI theory when focusing ethical and moral challenges in educational settings. This idea meets some peculiarities of the Hungarian public education and teacher training too. The day, the 16th of April, is dedicated to the remembrance of the victims of the Holocaust in Hungary for 20 years now in the institutions of public education. It means that this day each school is suggested to devote a form of educational activities to the topic. The fact that this mid-April day overlaps the period of the spring semester of universities suggests unique opportunity for cooperation between teacher candidates and public schools. The significance of commemorating victims of the Holocaust, called remembrance education, is tangible once you interpret the lines cited on this slide. Narratives like this appear time by time in public speech in Hungary, and authors of such lines are not discriminated against, but even rewarded for humanitarian values, still, hopefully, interpreted quote-unquote, not exclusively in my intention. Phenomenon like this example may explain why different forms of productive learning has taken place with the cooperation of teachers and pre-study teachers, students in Pécs, keeping in mind that suburban partner schools of our university are overrepresented with pupils from vulnerable social groups, a lot of them belonging to Roma Gypsy communities. Considering that the representatives of the most vulnerable social groups typically had vocational education after completing their primary education, and keeping in mind that the mandatory age for attending the education system is 16 years of age in Hungary, one may conclude that youngsters, who are the easiest to be targeted by far-right ideas, do not personalize the lessons of the Holocaust, and they exit their institutional education without such experience. In order to provide such an educational effect to as many pupils as possible within the mandatory phase of public education, relevant thematic plans have been outlined from spring 2011 for pupils on the 8th grade of primary education, meaning 14-15-year-old boys and girls. Some of these plans have been put into practice by student teachers based on their own choice during their individual specific teaching practical the following semester, mostly those who are specializing in history. But for most of them, it remained a theoretical project. Therefore, from a year later on, for 4 years between 2012 and 2015, similar plans were designed and put into practice in primary schools as well as during a course included in teacher education. Irrespectively of their major, teacher candidates prepared teaching materials and learning aids aiming at interpreting the Holocaust through the evocation of 2 different Gardnerian intelligences, each in groups. As 4 groups created material for a 45-minute-long lesson, the outcomes of their work altogether led to a core program of a 4 times 45 minutes long thematic day that relies on the evocation of each intelligence described by Gardner. In this way, reaching out to pupils with all kinds of intelligence profiles. The thematic day was built on a relevant common previous input, and after the core classes, there was also a 45 minutes long lesson held for pupils' reflection. Student teachers could also reflect on their own professional experience after the thematic day. Within 4 years, 9 groups of pupils at 5 different schools were involved. 1 school remained in this cooperation for 4 years. 1 asked for partnership 2 times, and 3 participated once only. But even those partners kept the program they got involved in. As for the input of these thematic days, Faithlessness, a movie based on an Oscar Prize-winning novel by Imre Kertész, which is mandatory to be read for 8th graders in Hungarian public education, was used initially. Later on, a short documentary edited by myself was used. Within this documentary, I intended to connect the fate of Jewish survivors and those coming from Roma Gypsy communities, focusing on the story of 2 local survivors using their video testimonies. The input material in both cases had been elaborated by student teachers during one of their elective courses in teacher education, implementing Gardner's MI theory and conducted on the Sematic Day. During the years, 5 groups of student teachers took this task. In the meanwhile, pupils and teachers from the partner schools and student teachers gave positive feedback on their own related learning experiences. Additionally to these elective courses, other types of professional activities have been carried out related to the Gardnerian theory. After we had received copyright permission from Professor Gardner, some of my students volunteered to translate a selection of basic literature on the MI approach as alternative course tasks. Besides publishing the Holocaust Commemoration Sematic Day plans, another edited compilation of lesson plans and the reflections using Gardner's theory regarding different subjects on various grades of public education was edited, each piece compiled by students pre- or in-service teacher education. By today, several end tasks of teacher education, so-called teacher portfolios, contain elements of course design based on the Gardnerian approach due to the fact that the theory and its possible educational applications became a mandatory part of didactic courses at the University of Pécs in various forms of teacher education. As the framework of these professional activities, a research group called Diversity was founded in 2015 within the In-Service Student Teachers Society at the University of Pécs. The peculiarity of this group is that it connects researchers at different levels of their careers. The tutor being the senior researcher, that's myself, the mentors who are engaged in their PhD studies, and the mentees who are at the early stages of their researches. These students actively participate in conferences and academic competitions, adding to the quality assurance of research, development, training, and practice, just like Sándor-Schmidt, who is sharing about her own research in the forthcoming part of this presentation. Thank you for your attention.
I would like to warmly welcome to everyone. My name is Barbara Sándor-Schmidt, and now I would like to talk about the achievements of my related doctoral research. My work is built on one of the US Project Zero Project Spectrum method. It is called EIDW, which means everybody's intelligent in different ways. I adopted games and activities in different locations in the Carpathian Basin and observed different children's intelligences profiles. I also investigated preschool teachers. In this research, the closing the gap aspect may be traced as it contains the data of those using their Hungarian mother tongue as a minority language. I am trying to explore the possibilities of implementing the method in Hungarian-speaking preschool education. EIDW approach allows us to observe the different types of children's intelligences. In my PhD research, I investigate the games, activities, analyze the introductions, the curriculum, scoring criteria, observation sheets, summary sheets, and various profiles. Based on the initial results, I am able to present the first steps of the procedure. About the activities, we have the logical mathematical intelligence with the dinosaur and buzz game. We have the naturalistic intelligence with the treasure hunt game and the sink or swim activity. The musical intelligence with the music product and perception activity. The spatial intelligence with the art portfolios. The bodily kinesthetic intelligence with the creative movement, the athletic movement. and the interpersonal and interpersonal intelligence with the cluster model activity and the pair interaction checklist, and the linguistic intelligence with the storyboard activity. About the research venues, in Hungary I made researches in the University of Pécs and the grammar school, primary school and kindergarten of the Reformed Church in Pécs. In Ukraine, the Ferenc Rákóczi II Carpathian Institute, Berovo, and the kindergarten number 18 in Beregszás. In Croatia, the Josef Juri Sosmeyer University of Osijek, and in Slovakia, the János Seje University and the Bóbita Kindergarten Komárno. The research methodology. The exploration includes both qualitative and quantitative research procedures. In the fields of the qualitative aspect, it contains 72 kindergarten intelligence profiles and 51 of individual profiles from Croatia and 21 individual profiles from the Ukraine. It also contains 25 video program-assisted multi-coded data analyzers, which focus on preschoolers' multiple intelligences. In the following few minutes, I would like to mention two sub-studies of my PhD research. In the first one, I undertake the examine the activities which present the evaluation of the method. In the second one, I present intelligences profile of per-service kindergarten teacher students. Both researches may add to eliminate disadvantages. About the qualitative research, in the implementation of the convenience target layered quality sampling procedure, the element of the accessibility played the dominant role. The issue of the accessibility of research venues, the host institution greatly influence the sampling strategy. I examined the multi-coded data using a computer program called Atlas TI, while I focused primarily on the emotional manifestation of children. I used the FACTS, it is the facial action coding system, to observe the component of the action units of basic emotions. The codes were validated by intracoding, which was calculated with Cohen's kappa. The technical details. The average encoding time per video took an hour and a half, and the total encoding time was 38 hours. Including the intracoding process, the entire process took approximately 76 hours. The code sets used consisted of a total of 33 codes. During the coding process, the coding process took place 6,079 times. The average amount of the code was 38 codes per video. The total number of the notes for all videos is 43. The quantitative research, the questionnaire is completed by students number 233, aimed at the multiple intelligences profiling. In this research, I focused the Croatian and the Ukrainian profiles. The investigation was based on the MIP Q3 and 4 multiple intelligences profiling questionnaire, which is a 5-point Likert scale self-assessment questionnaire. My first result, you can see an example of the manifestation of the group emotion waves. The vertical line is the direction of the emotion. The horizontal line is the activity timeline. From the graph, we can observe how children's emotions change in the positive direction during the activity. In the second result, here what you can see is an aggregated intelligence profile of Osijek kindergarten teacher students. In this case, we may trace that where interpersonal intelligence is provided to be the most outstanding intelligence, and the mathematical logical intelligence remains the one to be developed. In the third result, it's also an aggregate intelligences profile, but of pre-service kindergarten teacher students in Berovo. This is It shows that the strongest intelligence was the naturalistic intelligence, and the weakest was also the mathematical logical intelligence. About the closing the gap aspect, the use of minority language formulas, just like the Ukrainian language law, does not preclude the application of the AIDW method. It may be flexible, adapted, easy to use, and be integrated into daily activities of kindergarten education. The design of the center and the use of the tools, which are the strengths of the method, also do not depend on language constraints. Good practice results have been obtained in primary school research for application of a similar method, as you can see in Maddox research 2007. Concerning the method within Hungary, it may strengthen the education of socially disadvantaged pupil or those with special needs. The lecture, as you can see from the lecture item cited, we have published about this topic for a few years, both in English and Hungarian. For compiling this presentation, we used sources from the related international materials. As you can see on the final side, we enclosed our email addresses. Feel free to contact us. We are open to discuss any emerging professional questions or remarks, and we would be more than happy to negotiate about any future cooperation related to topics we have just presented. So thank you for your attention.